Whispering Pines by Celine Bishop. Chapter 1. Claire Dalton gripped the steering wheel tighter as her car rounded the final bend. The road twisted and turned through the dense forest, sunlight filtering through the canopy in dappled patterns on the asphalt. She inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the crisp, pine-scented air. It had been years since she last visited Whispering Pines, and the memories flooded back with every mile. The breakup with Brian had left her shattered, a mess of raw emotions and unhealed wounds. The city, with its relentless pace and constant reminders of their time together, had become unbearable. She needed this escape, this return to the place that had once been her sanctuary. Whispering Pines was more than just a resort. It was where she had spent her happiest summers as a child, where her parents' laughter echoed in the trees, and where the world felt simpler. As the familiar wooden sign for Whispering Pines Resort came into view, Claire felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. She had arrived. Turning into the gravel driveway, she followed the path that led to the main lodge. The resort looked just as she remembered, yet there were signs of neglect, overgrown flower beds, chipped paint on the cabins, and an air of quiet desolation. Claire parked her car and stepped out, stretching her stiff limbs. The silence of the forest enveloped her, broken only by the distant call of a bird. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the tranquility seep into her bones. She was here to heal, to find herself again. "Can I help you with your bags?" a voice called out, startling her from her reverie. She turned to see a tall man approaching, his worn jeans and flannel shirt giving him a rugged, approachable appearance. His dark hair was tousled, and his blue eyes sparkled with curiosity and kindness. He looked to be in his mid-30s, a few years older than her, maybe. Trailing behind him was a young girl in a yellow dress that turned and dashed away before she could get a good look at her. "Thank you," Claire replied, her attention going back to the man. She offered him a tentative smile. "I'm Claire Dalton. I've reserved a cabin." The man nodded, extending a hand. "I'm Jake Grant, the manager here. Welcome to Whispering Pines. Let's get you settled in." As they walked to her car, Jake made light conversation, asking about her journey and if she had visited the resort before. Claire found herself relaxing, soothed by his easygoing manner. "I used to come here every summer with my parents," she explained. "It was our special place. I needed to get away from the city for a while, and this seemed like the perfect escape." Jake's expression softened. "Whispering Pines has a way of drawing people back. It's good to have you here." They reached her cabin, a quaint wooden structure nestled among towering pines. The porch, with its weathered rocking chairs, overlooked the tranquil lake, its surface shimmering in the afternoon sun. Inside, the cabin was cozy, with a stone fireplace, simple furnishings, and a scent of pine that reminded Claire of childhood summers. Jake set her bags down and turned to her. "If you need anything, just let me know. Dinner is served at the lodge at 7, and we have a small store with essentials if you need to stock up." "Thank you, Jake," Claire said, genuinely grateful. "I appreciate it." As Jake left, Claire wandered through the cabin, running her fingers over the worn wooden surfaces, feeling the weight of nostalgia settle in her chest. The cabin was a time capsule of her childhood, each knick-knack and piece of furniture a testament to summers spent exploring the woods and swimming in the lake. She paused by the stone fireplace, tracing the cracks in the hearth where she and her parents had roasted marshmallows, their laughter echoing in her memory. She moved to the kitchen, smelling faint traces of cinnamon. The old oak table still stood sturdy in the center, its surface marred with scratches from countless family meals and board games. Claire smiled wistfully, remembering the warmth and love that had filled this space. Stepping out onto the porch, the gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and the faint sound of the lake lapping against the shore. The view took her breath away. The tranquil lake, framed by towering pines and bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. She sank into one of the rocking chairs, its familiar creak a soothing balm to her weary soul. Closing her eyes, she let the peacefulness wash over her, each breath deepening her connection to this cherished place. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. This place, with its quiet beauty and soothing embrace, was exactly what she needed. The weight of the city, with its relentless pace and constant reminders of Brian, began to lift from her shoulders. Whispering Pines was more than a sanctuary. It was a bridge to her past, a reminder of who she was before the heartbreak. Claire knew her journey to healing wouldn't be easy. The scars left by Brian's betrayal were deep, and the pain still fresh. But Whispering Pines had always been her haven, a place where she felt safe and loved. Here, amidst the whispering trees, she felt the stirrings of peace within her heart. The memories of her parents, their love and wisdom, seemed to whisper through the pines, encouraging her to find her way back to herself. As the sun began its descent, casting a golden glow over the lake, Claire whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. The colors of the sunset mirrored the emotions swirling within her, a blend of sorrow and hope, pain and healing. She was ready to face the pain, to mend her broken heart, and to discover the strength within her that she had forgotten. The gentle rustling of the leaves and the soft murmurs of the lake seemed to join her in her resolve. She sat there, rocking gently, until the stars began to appear in the twilight sky, each one a tiny beacon of hope. This was her new beginning, a chance to rebuild her life and find joy again. And with the love and memories of her parents guiding her, she knew she had the strength to do it. Chapter 2. The next morning, Claire woke to the gentle sound of birds chirping and the soft rustling of leaves outside her window. She lay in bed for a moment, savoring the tranquility that Whispering Pines offered. The cabin was filled with soft morning light filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the wooden walls. She stretched, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. After a quick shower, Claire dressed in comfortable jeans and a light sweater, ready to explore the resort and reacquaint herself with the surroundings. She stepped out onto the porch, inhaling deeply the crisp, pine-scented air. The sky was a clear blue, and the sun was beginning its ascent, promising a beautiful day ahead. As she walked towards the main lodge, she marveled at the natural beauty around her. The lake shimmered in the morning light, its surface like glass. Tall pines stood sentinel around the water, their reflections creating a mirrored forest. She could hear the distant sound of water lapping against the shore, and the occasional splash of fish breaking the surface. The main lodge came into view, a charming structure with a large wraparound porch adorned with hanging flower baskets. The building had a rustic charm, with its log construction and large windows that invited the outside in. As she approached, the front door opened, and Jake was carrying a stack of firewood. "Good morning, Claire," he greeted her with a warm smile. "Did you sleep well?" "Good morning," she replied, smiling back. "I slept wonderfully. Thank you. This place is so peaceful." "It's a special spot," Jake agreed, setting the firewood down on the porch. "Would you like some breakfast? We've got fresh coffee and pastries inside." "That sounds perfect," Claire said, following him into the lodge. The interior was cozy and inviting, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. Comfortable leather chairs and wooden tables were arranged in small clusters, creating intimate spaces for guests to relax. A long wooden counter at the far end of the room served as a reception and dining area, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Jake led Claire to the counter, where a young woman with bright red hair and a friendly smile was arranging an assortment of pastries. "Claire, this is Lucy. She helps out with just about everything around here." "Nice to meet you, Claire," Lucy said, extending a hand. "Nice to meet you too, Lucy," Claire replied, shaking her hand. Everything looks delicious. Thank you. Help yourself to whatever you like. We've got coffee, tea, and fresh juice as well, Lucy said, gesturing to the spread. Claire selected a blueberry muffin and poured herself a cup of coffee. She took a seat by the fireplace, savoring the warmth and the comforting aroma of the coffee. Jake asked if he could join her with his own cup, and they sat in companionable silence for a few moments, enjoying the peaceful morning. So, what brings you to Whispering Pines? Jake asked after a while, his tone gentle and curious. Claire took a sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. I needed a break from the city, from my life there. I went through a difficult breakup and I needed to get away. This place has always been special to me. I used to come here every summer with my parents. It feels like the right place to heal. Jake nodded, his expression sympathetic. I understand. Whispering Pines has a way of offering solace. I'm glad you're here, Claire. If there's anything you need, just let me know. Thank you, Claire said, grateful for his kindness. I appreciate it. As she finished her muffin, the lodge began to come to life with the sounds of other guests starting their day. Jake excused himself, and Claire watched as families and couples trickled in, greeted warmly by Jake and Lucy. The lodge had a welcoming atmosphere, and she could see why people were drawn to it. After breakfast, Claire decided to explore the resort grounds. She strolled along the well-worn paths that wound through the trees, taking in the sights and sounds of nature. She passed by the dock where a few rowboats were tied up, their reflections dancing on the water. Nearby, a small group of children were excitedly preparing for a fishing trip, their laughter echoing across the lake. As she walked, Claire's thoughts drifted to Jake. There was something about him that intrigued her. He had a quiet strength, a calm presence that made her feel at ease. She wondered about his story, about the challenges he faced as the manager of this beautiful but struggling resort. Lost in thought, she almost didn't notice the young girl sitting on a bench by the lake, her head bent over a book. The girl's long, dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore a simple sundress. Claire recognized her from the previous day with Jake. Hi there, Claire said softly, not wanting to startle her. Lily looked up, her brown eyes wary. Hi, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. What are you reading? Claire asked, taking a seat on the bench a respectful distance away. Lily hesitated before showing the cover of her book. It's a mystery book. I like solving puzzles. That sounds interesting, Claire said, genuinely curious. I used to love mysteries when I was your age. My favorite part was always trying to figure out the ending before the characters did. Lily's expression softened slightly. Me too. It's like a challenge. Claire smiled, sensing an opportunity to connect. I'm Claire, by the way. I'm staying in one of the cabins for a while. Is your dad Jake? Lily nodded, her guard still up. Your dad has been very kind to me. He's good at that, taking care of people. Claire's heart went out to the young girl. It couldn't be easy growing up in such a remote place. It must be nice to have such a beautiful place to call home, she said, looking out at the lake. It is, Lily admitted, her gaze following Claire's, but it's lonely sometimes. What about your mother? Lily looked down, not answering her. Claire nodded, understanding more than Lily realized. I can imagine it must be lonely sometimes. But if you ever need someone to talk to, or share a mystery with, I'm here. Lily looked at her for a long moment before nodding. Thanks. Claire smiled, feeling a small but significant connection forming. You're welcome. As the day wore on, Claire continued her exploration, feeling more at ease with each passing hour. She discovered a small garden behind the lodge, where herbs and flowers grew untamed. The scent of lavender and rosemary filled the air, and Claire found herself lingering, enjoying the simple beauty of it. Later in the afternoon, she made her way to the lakeshore, where a wooden dock extended out into the water. She sat at the edge, dipping her toes into the cool lake, watching as the water rippled and shimmered in the sunlight. The tranquility of the place seeped into her soul, easing the ache of her broken heart. She headed back to the lodge, where Jake was busy preparing for the evening. He looked up as she approached, his smile warm and welcoming. "How was your day?" he asked. "Wonderful," Claire replied, meaning it. "This place is exactly what I needed." Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad to hear that. We're having a bonfire tonight down by the lake. You should join us." "I'd love to," Claire said, feeling a warmth spread through her at the thought of spending more time with Jake and the other guests. As the evening descended, Claire found herself by the bonfire, surrounded by laughter and the crackling of the flames. The fire cast a golden glow on the faces of those gathered, creating an intimate and welcoming atmosphere. Jake played his guitar, the soft melodies blending with the sounds of the night. Claire sat next to Lily, who had brought her book along. They shared a comfortable silence, punctuated by occasional conversation about the story Lily was reading. Claire felt a sense of belonging, a connection to the people and the place that was slowly mending the fractures in her heart. The flickering flames of the bonfire cast a warm golden glow over the gathering. She glanced around at the faces illuminated by the firelight, her gaze inevitably drawn to Jake. His voice, soft and melodic, filled the night air, weaving a spell of its own. Claire's heart quickened as their eyes met, a silent connection sparking between them. In that moment, surrounded by the enchanting ambiance, Claire allowed herself to believe that in this magical place, anything was possible. As the night wore on, and the stars appeared in the clear sky above, Claire whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Chapter 3. The following morning, the peaceful atmosphere of Whispering Pines was disrupted by an early storm. Claire woke to the sound of rain drumming against the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder in the distance. She lay in bed for a moment, listening to the rhythmic patter and feeling a sense of unease that hadn't been there the day before. She dressed quickly, choosing a cozy sweater, jeans, and a jacket, and made her way to the main lodge for breakfast. The storm had brought a chill to the air, and she wrapped her arms around herself as she hurried along the path. The trees swayed gently in the wind, their leaves whispering secrets as she passed. The lodge was a hive of activity when she arrived. Guests were gathered inside, seeking refuge from the rain. The large windows offered a view of the stormy lake, its surface churned by the wind. Claire spotted Jake by the fireplace, stoking the fire to provide extra warmth for the guests. "Good morning," Jake greeted her as she approached. "Quite a storm, isn't it?" "Good morning, Jake." "Yes, it is," Claire replied, smiling despite the unease she felt. Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Storms like these are common around here. They usually pass quickly. In the meantime, we'll make sure everyone is comfortable and entertained." Claire admired Jake's calm demeanor. He seemed to take everything in stride, always ready to lend a hand or offer reassurance. She made her way to the dining area, where Lucy was busy setting out breakfast. The scent of freshly baked bread and brewed coffee filled the air, creating a cozy contrast to the storm outside. "Good morning, Claire," Lucy said, her smile bright despite the gloomy weather. "Help yourself to some breakfast. We've got warm pastries and hot drinks to chase away the chill." "Thank you, Lucy," Claire said, selecting a croissant and pouring herself a cup of tea. She found a seat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The storm was fierce, but there was a certain beauty to it, a reminder of nature's power and unpredictability. She finished her breakfast and decided to spend some time reading by the fireplace. The warmth of the fire and the soft murmur of conversations around her provided a comforting backdrop as she lost herself in her book. As the morning wore on, the storm showed no signs of letting up. The wind howled outside, and the rain continued to fall, Claire found it difficult to concentrate. She decided to explore the lodge more thoroughly, hoping to distract herself. She wandered through the various rooms, admiring the rustic decor and the numerous photographs that lined the walls. One room, in particular, caught her attention. It was a small library, its shelves filled with an eclectic mix of books. The room had a cozy feel, with a large window offering a view of the storm outside. Claire selected a book at random and settled into a comfortable armchair, losing herself in the pages. Hours passed, and the storm continued to rage outside. Claire became so engrossed in her reading that she almost didn't hear the sound of footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Lily standing in the doorway, a shy smile on her face. "Hello," Lily said softly. "Hey," Claire replied, smiling warmly. "Come on in." Lily entered the room, her eyes wide with curiosity. "This is a wonderful little hideaway," Claire said. "I've always loved books. They're like old friends." Lily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I like books too. They help me escape." Claire felt a pang of empathy for the young girl. "What are you escaping from, Lily?" Lily hesitated, then shrugged. "Just things. It's lonely here sometimes." Claire reached out and gently touched Lily's arm. "I understand. It can be hard to feel alone. But you're not alone, Lily. You have your dad, and now you have me too." Lily's eyes brightened at Claire's words, but she said nothing. They spent the next few hours reading together, the storm outside forgotten as they lost themselves in the world of books. Claire found herself growing fond of Lily, admiring her resilience and her quiet strength. She started to feel a sense of protectiveness towards the young girl. As evening approached, the storm finally began to subside. The rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, and the wind died down, leaving the air fresh and cool. Claire and Lily made their way back to the main lodge, where the guests were gathering for dinner. The dining room was filled with the delicious aroma of home-cooked food, and the atmosphere was warm and inviting. Claire took a seat next to Jake, feeling a sense of belonging that had been absent for so long. "How was your day?" Jake asked as they began to eat. "Not very eventful," Claire replied with a smile. "I spent some time in the library with Lily. She's a wonderful girl." Jake's eyes softened. "She is. I'm glad you're getting to know her. Her mother hasn't been around and it's been tough on her. I'm happy to be here. This place and the people have been really great." As they ate, the lodge was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sense of renewal and hope. Claire looked around at the faces and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Whispering Pines was not just a place. It was a haven of healing and new beginnings. And as Claire sat there surrounded by new friends and the promise of brighter days, she knew that she had finally found her way back to herself. Chapter 4. The following morning, the sun broke through the lingering clouds, casting a soft golden glow over Whispering Pines. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and clean, with the scent of pine and wet earth mingling pleasantly. Claire awoke with a sense of renewed purpose, eager to see what the day would bring. She dressed and then headed to the main lodge for breakfast. The lodge was already bustling with activity, the guests chatting animatedly about the storm and their plans for the day. Claire spotted Jake near the fireplace, talking with an elderly couple. He caught her eye and waved her over. "Good morning, Claire," Jake greeted her warmly. "How did you sleep?" "Good morning, Jake. I slept well, thank you," Claire replied, smiling. The storm was quite something, but it was oddly soothing. "It's amazing how nature can be both fierce and calming," Jake agreed. "We're planning some activities for today, now that the weather has cleared up. How about a hike to the overlook? The view is incredible after a storm." "That sounds wonderful," Claire said, her excitement growing. "I'd love to join." As they finished their breakfast, Jake gathered a small group of guests for the hike, including Lily, who looked thrilled at the prospect of an adventure. Claire felt a sense of camaraderie forming among the group, a bond forged by shared experiences and the beauty of their surroundings. They set off along a well-worn trail, the ground still damp from the rain. The path wound through the dense forest, the trees towering above them like ancient guardians. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating a dappled pattern on the forest floor. The air was filled with the chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves, a symphony of nature that soothed Claire's soul. Jake led the way, pointing out various plants and wildlife along the trail. His knowledge and passion for the outdoors were evident, and the group listened intently to his every word. Claire walked beside Lily, who was full of questions about the plants and animals they encountered. "Do you think we'll see any deer?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "It's possible," Claire replied, smiling at the girl's enthusiasm. "Deer are quite common around here. You just have to keep your eyes open and be very quiet." Lily nodded, her face serious. "I'll be as quiet as a mouse." They continued their hike, the trail gradually becoming steeper as they approached the overlook. The climb was challenging, but the breathtaking beauty of the forest spurred them on. Claire found herself lost in thought, reflecting on her journey to Whispering Pines and the unexpected connections she had made. Finally, they reached the overlook, a rocky outcrop that jutted out over the valley below. The view was nothing short of spectacular. The forest stretched out in all directions, a sea of green. The group stood in awe, taking in the stunning panorama. Claire felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude wash over her. This place, with its natural beauty and tranquil spirit, was helping her heal in ways she hadn't thought possible. Jake gathered everyone for a group photo, capturing the moment and the shared joy. As they posed, Claire found herself standing next to him, their shoulders brushing. She glanced at Jake, and he smiled at her, a warm, genuine smile that made her heart flutter. After the photo, they sat on the rocks, enjoying the view and the sense of accomplishment. Jake handed out bottles of water and snacks, and they shared stories and laughter, the bond between them growing stronger. As they began the descent back to the lodge, Claire walked beside Jake, the comfortable silence between them, charged with an electric tension. Each step seemed to draw them closer, an unspoken connection simmering just beneath the surface. "You've done a wonderful job with Whispering Pines," Claire said, breaking the silence, her voice soft but laced with sincerity. "It's a place of beauty and hope." "Thank you, Claire," Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot. This place has always been special to me. It's where I found my own peace, and I wanted to share that with others." Claire nodded, feeling the weight of his words and the intensity in his gaze. "I can see why. It's magical here." When they returned to the lodge, the group dispersed to their various activities. Claire and Jake lingered on the porch, watching the guests scatter. The sun was high in the sky now, and the lodge was bathed in a warm, golden light. Jake turned to her, his eyes holding hers with a smoldering intensity. "I was thinking," Jake said, his voice low and inviting. "We could use some help with the garden. It's a community project, and everyone pitches in. Would you be interested?" "I'd love to," Claire replied, her spirits lifting at the thought. Gardening sounds like the perfect way to spend the afternoon. They made their way to the garden, a large, sunlit area behind the lodge. The garden was full of colors, with flowers of every hue blooming in wild profusion. There were also vegetable patches, herbs, and fruit trees, all thriving under the care of the lodge's guests and staff. Jake handed Claire a pair of gloves and a trowel, their fingers brushing for a moment longer than necessary. "We're planting some new flowers today. I thought you might like to help." Claire knelt beside a flower bed, digging holes for the young plants. The rich, earthy scent of the soil filled her senses, grounding her in the present moment. As she worked, She felt the warmth of Jake's presence beside her. Their silent communication a dance of mutual attraction and unspoken desires. Lily soon joined them, her small hands eager to help. Claire and Jake guided her, teaching her how to plant the flowers and care for the garden. The three of them worked side by side, their laughter mingling with the sounds of nature. As they planted the last flower, Claire sat back on her heels, wiping her brow. That was a lot of work. Jake smiled, his eyes twinkling with a mix of admiration and something deeper. Gardening is a labor of love. Lily looked up at them, her face shining with happiness. I love the garden. It's like we're planting our own little piece of heaven. Claire's heart swelled with affection for the young girl. You're right, Lily. We're creating something beautiful. As the afternoon turned to evening, they finished their work in the garden and returned to the lodge. Dinner was a lively affair, with everyone sharing stories of their day and enjoying the delicious food prepared by Lucy and her team. The sense of community was palpable, and Claire felt a deep sense of belonging. After dinner, Claire and Jake found themselves on the porch once again, the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant call of an owl. Thank you for today, Claire said softly, her eyes locking onto Jake's. It was exactly what I needed. You're welcome, Jake replied, his voice equally soft but laced with an edge of longing. I'm glad you're here. Claire smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. A warmth that had as much to do with Jake as with the place itself. This place and the people here have given me so much. I'm grateful for every moment. As they stood there, side by side, the night enfolding them in its quiet embrace, Claire felt a sense of contentment that she hadn't known in a long time. Jake was standing so close to her. The proximity of his body, the subtle brush of his arm against hers, the way his eyes lingered on her lips, all alluded to something deeper, something more intimate. It's getting late, Claire said, suddenly feeling very nervous. She didn't miss the quick look of disappointment in Jake's eyes before she turned away. Chapter 5. Claire woke the next morning, feeling unusually light. Whispering Pines had wrapped its arms around her, soothing her troubled mind. She stretched and got out of bed, her thoughts drifting to Jake and the garden they'd planted together. The memory of his touch, his voice, and the way he looked at her lingered, stirring feelings she had tried to ignore. After breakfast, Claire found Jake on the porch, sipping coffee and gazing out at the tranquil lake. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over to join him, her heart beating a little faster than usual. Morning, Jake, she said, smiling. Morning, Claire, he replied, his eyes lighting up as they met hers. Sleep well? Amazing, she said. Jake nodded, his gaze softening. I'm glad to hear that. Claire took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. I was thinking, Jake, you've done an amazing job with the lodge, but I couldn't help noticing that it's a bit quiet here. Have you ever considered doing some marketing to attract guests? Jake's eyebrows lifted slightly. I have, but marketing isn't really my strong suit. My focus has always been on the experience here, not so much on the promotion. Well, I have some experience in that area. That is actually what I do for a living, Claire said, her voice gaining confidence. I'd love to help. We could come up with some promotional ideas together. Maybe run some campaigns to bring in more visitors. Jake's smile widened, and Claire couldn't help but feel a thrill at the way his eyes sparkled with interest. That would be amazing, Claire. I'd really appreciate your help. They spent the morning brainstorming in the lodge's cozy common room, papers and laptops spread out across the large wooden table. Claire found herself stealing glances at Jake, admiring the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the curve of his lips when he smiled, the strength in his hands as he gestured animatedly. She felt a connection growing between them, an unspoken understanding that went beyond words. "How about a weekend retreat package?" Claire suggested, her eyes meeting his. "We could focus on wellness and relaxation. Yoga classes, nature walks, maybe even some workshops." Jake nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "That's a great idea. People are always looking for ways to distress and reconnect with nature." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, each idea building on the last. The room seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the two of them in their shared bubble of creativity and mutual attraction. As the afternoon wore on, Jake leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms above his head. Claire's eyes were drawn to the way his shirt tightened across his chest, the play of muscles beneath the fabric. She quickly looked away, feeling a flush rise to her cheeks. "This is going to be great, Claire," Jake said, his voice filled with genuine excitement. "I can't thank you enough for helping with this." "It's my pleasure," Claire replied, her heart pounding. "I'm happy to be a part of it." They decided to take a break and head outside for some fresh air. The day had turned warm and sunny, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the towering pines. Claire and Jake walked side by side along the lake's edge, the tension between them palpable. "Do you ever get used to this view?" Claire asked, looking out over the sparkling water. "Never," Jake said, his voice low. "It's slightly different every day, but it's always beautiful." "Claire," Jake said softly, his voice sending a shiver down her spine. Before he could finish, a splash from the lake interrupted them. They turned to see Lily laughing as she splashed water with a stick. Claire chuckled, the moment broken, but the tension still lingering. "She's adorable," Claire said, her voice tinged with affection. "She is," Jake agreed, watching his daughter with a smile. "She's my world." Claire felt a pang of longing at his words, wishing she could be a part of that world. She shook off the thought, focusing instead on the project they were working on. "Shall we get back to it?" she suggested, her voice steady despite the tumult of emotions inside her. "Absolutely," Jake said, his eyes lingering on hers for a moment longer before they headed back to the lodge. They spent the rest of the day refining their ideas, creating promotional materials, and planning the first retreat. The air between them crackled with energy, each touch, each glance charged with a growing attraction that neither could deny. As evening approached, they found themselves back on the porch, the setting sun turning the sky pink and orange. Claire felt a sense of accomplishment, mixed with the thrill of the day's closeness to Jake. "I think we've made some great progress," she said, looking at him with a smile. "We have," Jake agreed, his gaze intense. "Thank you, Claire, for everything." They stood there in the fading light, the silence between them filled with possibilities. Claire felt the pull of him, the magnetic draw that seemed to defy logic. She took a step closer, her heart racing. "Jake, Before she could finish, Jake closed the distance between them, his hand reaching out to gently cup her cheek. Claire's breath hitched, the world narrowing to the warmth of his touch, the intensity in his eyes. "Claire," he murmured, his voice a husky whisper. "I've been wanting to do this." And then he kissed her. The world seemed to stop as their lips met, a sweet, slow kiss that spoke of promises and unspoken desires. Claire felt herself melt into him, her hands finding their way to his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her fingertips. When they finally pulled apart, their breaths mingling in the cool evening air, Claire looked into Jake's eyes and saw her own feelings reflected back at her. She didn't come here looking for love, but she couldn't ignore that there was something between them. A pull she just couldn't resist. Chapter 6. Claire woke early the next morning. She stretched and sat up, her thoughts immediately drifting to Jake and the kiss they shared. The memory sent a pleasant shiver through her. Claire dressed and made her way to the lodge. She found Lily there, sitting at the table with a coloring book, her small face serious as she carefully colored within the lines. Claire approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning, Lily," she said softly, sitting down across from her. "Good morning, Claire," Lily replied without looking up, her voice subdued. Claire watched her for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "What are you drawing?" "A garden," Lily said simply, "like the one we planted yesterday." "That's beautiful," Claire said, admiring the bright flowers and green leaves Lily had drawn. "You're very talented." Lily finally looked up, her eyes meeting Claire's. There was a vulnerability there, a sadness that belied her young age. Claire's heart ached for her, knowing there was more to this little girl's story than she had been told. "Lily, can I ask you something?" Claire said gently. "I've noticed that sometimes you seem sad. Is there something you want to talk about?" Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she quickly looked down at her drawing, her small hands gripping the crayons tightly. Claire reached out, placing a comforting hand on Lily's. "It's okay, sweetie," Claire said softly. "You can talk to me if you want." Lily sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I miss my mommy," she said in a small voice. "She left a long time ago, and she never came back." Claire's heart broke at the pain in Lily's words. She had suspected something like this, but hearing it confirmed made her chest tighten with empathy. "I'm so sorry, Lily," Claire said, her voice filled with genuine compassion. "That must be really hard for you." Lily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I feel like she didn't want me." Claire moved her chair closer, wrapping her arms around Lily and holding her tight. "Oh, sweetie, I can't imagine how hard that must be. But I want you to know something very important. It's not your fault. Your mommy's choices don't have anything to do with you." Lily buried her face in Claire's shoulder, her small body shaking with sobs. Claire held her, her own eyes filling with tears. She remembered feeling lost and abandoned herself, though her circumstances were different. She knew how deep that pain could go, and she wanted to help Lily find some measure of peace. When her sobs finally subsided, Claire pulled back slightly, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's tear-streaked face. "You know, Lily, I felt lost and hurt too," she said softly. "My boyfriend and I went through a difficult time, and it made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I wasn't wanted. But I learned something very important through all of that." Lily looked up at her, her eyes wide and full of questions. "What did you learn?" "I learned that my worth doesn't depend on other people's actions," Claire said, her voice gentle but firm. "And neither does yours. You are a wonderful, special person, Lily. And you are so loved." Lily sniffled again, her eyes searching Claire's face. "Do you really think so?" "I know so," Claire said, her voice filled with conviction. "Your daddy loves you more than anything in the world, and so do all the people here at Whispering Pines. We're your family too." A small smile tugged at Lily's lips, and she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Claire hugged her again. "Anytime you want to talk, I'm here. You're not alone." As they pulled apart, Claire had an idea. "How about we do something special today, just the two of us?" Lily's eyes lit up with excitement. "Like what?" "How about a picnic by the lake?" Claire suggested. "We can pack some lunch, bring a blanket, and spend the day there." "I'd love that," Lily exclaimed, her earlier sadness replaced by a bright smile. "Great," Claire said, standing up. "Let's go pack our picnic." They spent the morning preparing, filling a basket with sandwiches, fruit, and cookies. Lily's laughter filled the kitchen as they worked, the sound a balm to Claire's soul. When they were ready, they headed down to the lake, finding a perfect spot beneath a large oak tree. The day was warm and sunny, the sky a brilliant blue. Claire spread out the blanket, and they sat together, enjoying their lunch and talking about everything and nothing. Claire shared stories from her own childhood, making Lily giggle with tales of her mischievous antics. After lunch, they lay back on the blanket, watching the clouds drift lazily across the sky. Claire felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that she had helped to ease Lily's pain, even if only a little. Claire turned to Lily, her heart full. "Thank you for spending the day with me, Lily. I had a wonderful time." "Me too," Lily said, her eyes shining. "You make me feel better." "I'm glad," Claire said, squeezing her hand. They walked back to the lodge hand in hand. Claire felt a sense of purpose, knowing that she was making a difference in Lily's life. As they approached the lodge, Jake came out to meet them, his eyes lighting up at the sight of them together. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice warm. "It was perfect," Claire said, her eyes meeting his. "Absolutely perfect." Jake smiled, his gaze lingering on her for a moment, before he turned to Lily. "And you, little lady?" "It was the best day ever," Lily said, her face glowing with happiness. Jake's eyes softened, and he looked back at Claire, gratitude, and something deeper shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Claire," he said softly. "For everything." Claire felt a warmth spread through her. How would she ever leave Whispering Pines and go back to her job in the city? The thought filled her with dread. Chapter 7. Claire spent the next morning helping with the resort's marketing, brainstorming ideas with Jake, and drafting promotional materials. The afternoon was spent gardening with Lily and organizing guest events. But as the day passed, Claire and Jake found themselves gravitating towards each other, their bond deepening with each shared moment. That evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Jake approached Claire with a glint in his eye and a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Claire, how about we take a break from all the work tonight? I was thinking we could have dinner by the lake. Just the two of us." Claire's heart skipped a beat. The thought of a quiet evening alone with Jake sent a thrill through her. "That sounds wonderful," she replied, her voice soft. As twilight fell, Jake led Claire to a secluded spot by the lake. A blanket was spread out on the grass, and a picnic basket sat nearby, its contents promising a delicious meal. The lake's surface reflected the deepening hues of the sunset, casting a golden glow over everything. Claire felt a sense of enchantment, the scene like something out of a dream. Jake helped her settle onto the blanket before he unpacked the basket. "I hope you like what I've prepared," he said, a touch of shyness in his tone. Claire watched as he laid out an assortment of food, fresh pasta salad, savory pastries, and a bottle of crisp white wine. "It looks amazing, Jake." "Thank you." They began their meal, the conversation flowing easily. They talked about their day, shared stories from their pasts, and laughed over light-hearted anecdotes. But as the sun sank lower, the atmosphere shifted. There was a tension in the air, an electricity that neither of them could ignore. "Claire," Jake began, his voice low and earnest. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day about finding your worth. I want you to know that you've brought so much light and energy to this place. You've brought that to me too." Claire's breath caught in her throat. "I feel the same way. I've rediscovered a part of myself I thought was lost." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds the gentle lapping of the lake and the soft chirping of crickets. Then Jake reached for her hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her. "I know we've both been hurt before," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I can't deny what I'm feeling. Being with you feels right, Claire. Like coming home." Claire's heart swelled with emotion. She squeezed his hand, her eyes locking onto his. "I feel it too, Jake, but I don't want to rush into anything and risk getting hurt again." Jake nodded, his eyes filled with understanding and something deeper, something that made Claire's pulse race. "We can take it slow," he said softly. "One step at a time." Claire felt a surge of warmth, her fears melting away under Jake's steady gaze. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered, leaning closer. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken promises and a growing sense of anticipation. Claire could feel the tension building, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to close the distance between them, to feel his lips against hers, but she held back, savoring the charged silence. Jake seemed to sense her hesitation. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The simple gesture sent a shiver down her spine, igniting a fire deep within her. "Claire," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. "I'm willing to wait until you are ready." Claire's resolve wavered. She could feel the magnetic pull between them, the undeniable chemistry that had been building since the day they met. With a soft sigh, she leaned in, her lips brushing against his in a tentative, almost hesitant kiss. Jake responded immediately, his hand cupping her cheek as he deepened the kiss. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them, wrapped in each other's arms. Claire's heart raced, her body tingling with desire and a newfound sense of hope. When they finally pulled apart, their breaths mingling in the cool evening air, Claire felt a sense of clarity. For the first time in a long while, she felt ready to face whatever came next. They sat together, watching the stars emerge one by one in the night sky. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the sounds of nature. Claire felt a profound sense of peace, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "Jake," she said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "What are your dreams? What do you want for the future?" Jake's gaze shifted to the horizon, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I want to see Whispering Pines thrive," he said slowly. "I want it to be a place where people can find healing and peace, just like we have. And I want to build a life here, surrounded by people I care about." Claire felt a warmth spread through her. "That sounds beautiful," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "And what about you, Claire? What are your dreams?" he asked. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities. "I want to find my place in the world," she admitted, "to do something meaningful and fulfilling." Jake's eyes softened, and he reached for her hand again, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You can have that here, Claire. You're part of our Whispering Pines family now." Claire's heart swelled with gratitude and affection. She leaned her head against Jake's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered, "for everything." They sat together in companionable silence, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. Claire felt a sense of contentment, feeling like she was where she was meant to be. As the night grew darker, they reluctantly gathered their things and made their way back to the lodge. The air was filled with the soft sounds of nature, a soothing symphony that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. When they reached the porch, Jake turned to Claire, his eyes filled with a mixture of longing and determination. "Good night, Claire," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "Sweet dreams." "Good night, Jake," Claire replied, her heart fluttering. Chapter 8. The tranquility of Whispering Pines was suddenly shattered by the appearance of an unwelcome face from Claire's past. As Claire was finishing up a marketing strategy session with Jake in the lodge's cozy office, the door opened, and there stood Brian, her ex-boyfriend. His presence was like a storm cloud, darkening the bright, peaceful atmosphere. "Claire," Brian said, his voice tinged with desperation and determination. Claire's heart skipped a beat, a mix of shock and dread washing over her. "Brian, what are you doing here?" she managed to say, her voice trembling. Jake stood up, his protective instincts immediately kicking in. "Is everything okay, Claire?" he asked, his eyes flicking between Claire and Brian with concern. Claire took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Jake, this is Brian, my ex-boyfriend." She turned to Brian, her expression hardening. "Why are you here? And how did you know where I was?" Brian's eyes were filled with a mix of regret and longing. "I came to see you, Claire. I have to make things right. I saw you posted online, photos of trees and a lake. I knew you were at Whispering Pines." Claire led Brian out onto the porch, the cool breeze a stark contrast to the tension between them. Jake followed, standing a respectful distance away, but close enough to intervene if needed. Brian looked around, taking in the beauty. "This place is beautiful, Claire. I can see why you would want to come here." Claire crossed her arms, trying to shield herself from the emotional whirlwind. "Why are you really here, Brian?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake, Claire. Susie, she meant nothing. It was the worst mistake of my life. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I've realized what I lost. Come home, Claire." Claire's heart clenched at his words. She had spent so long trying to heal from the pain Brian had caused. You can't just show up here and apologize and expect everything to go back to the way it was. "I've moved on, and you should too." Brian stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "Have you really, Claire? Can you honestly say you don't still have feelings for me?" Claire resisted looking at Jake, who was watching the exchange from the doorway with worry. She felt a pang of guilt and confusion. Her feelings for Jake had grown stronger each day, but Brian's sudden reappearance had thrown her heart into turmoil. "Brian," Claire admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's complicated." He reached out to touch her hand, but she pulled away, the pain of their breakup still too raw. "I understand, Claire. But please, give me a chance to prove that I've changed. Just spend some time with me, and you'll see." Jake's jaw tightened, his eyes never leaving Claire's face. "Brian, maybe you should give Claire some space to think." Brian glanced at Jake, his expression wary. "Who the hell are you?" Jake stepped forward, his calm demeanor unwavering. "I'm someone who cares about her." Claire felt a surge of electricity through her heart. She took a deep breath, trying to clear her mind. "Brian, I think you should go. I don't need this right now. I came here to get away from the drama." Brian glared at Jake. "I don't know who you are, but this is a personal matter between my girlfriend and I." "Brian, I'm not your girlfriend anymore." "I think you should go," Claire said. Brian nodded. "I see. I'm staying in town at the family Star Inn. I love you, Claire Bear. I always have. Come tonight and I'll prove it to you." With that, Brian turned and walked away, leaving Claire standing on the porch, her emotions in turmoil. Jake stepped closer. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his eyes filled with concern. Claire nodded, though she felt anything but okay. "I don't know. Brian showing up like this. It's bringing back so many memories." Jake reached out and gently took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Just take your time and listen to your heart." Claire felt a rush of gratitude for Jake's understanding. She squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his presence. "Thank you, Jake. For everything." Jake smiled, his eyes softening. Claire found herself torn between her past with Brian and her growing feelings for Jake. Brian's presence in town was a constant reminder of the love they had once shared, but it also brought back the pain of their breakup. Jake and Claire continued to work on the resort's marketing together, but there was an undercurrent of tension, a sense of unresolved feelings that hung between them. That evening, as the sun set over the lake, Claire found herself sitting on the porch, lost in thought. The sound of footsteps drew her attention, and she looked up to see Jake approaching. "Hey," he said softly, taking a seat beside her. "How are you holding up?" Claire sighed, feeling the weight of her emotions. "Okay, I guess." Jake nodded, his expression understanding. "I can't imagine what you're going through. but I want you to know that I'm here for you." Claire felt a surge of gratitude for Jake's unwavering support. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Jake, I care about you. I've just been through a lot with Brian." Jake reached out and gently cupped her cheek, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. "Claire, whatever you decide, I'll respect your choice. I just want you to be happy." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes as she leaned into Jake's touch. "Thank you, Jake. You have no idea how much that means to me." Chapter 9. The air was crisp and clear the next day as Claire walked through the woods, each step carrying her closer to the town where Brian had taken up temporary residence. She had to leave the comfort of Whispering Pines to confront the shadows of her past. Her heart pounded in her chest as she reached the small inn where Brian was staying. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, and knocked on the door. Moments later, Brian opened it, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Claire," he said softly, stepping aside to let her in. "I knew you would come." Claire entered the room, her eyes scanning foreign surroundings. She turned to face Brian, her resolve hardening. "We need to talk." Brian nodded, gesturing for her to sit down. They took seats across from each other, the air thick with tension. Claire clasped her hands together, gathering her thoughts. "Brian," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I've spent the last day thinking about everything, about us, and I've realized that our relationship is over. I've moved on." Brian's face fell, the hope in his eyes dimming. "Claire, please. I know I hurt you, but I've changed. I want to make things right." Claire shook her head, her heart aching with the finality of her words. "Brian, you can't just show up and expect everything to go back to the way it was. I've been through so much pain, and I've worked hard to heal. I can't go back to that place." Brian reached out, his hand hovering over hers before he pulled back. "I understand, Claire, but seeing you again, it's brought back so many memories. I still love you." Claire closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "I loved you too, but I've moved on." Brian's shoulders slumped, the weight of her words sinking in. "We're different people now." "I've found something new," Claire said. "Someone new, you mean?" Brian said, his voice suddenly filled with anger. "You've moved on fast." Claire stood up, the burden of their shared past suddenly lifting from her shoulders. "I hope you find happiness, Brian, but it's not with me." She turned and walked out of the room, her heart heavy but resolute. As she stepped into the cool evening air, she felt a sense of liberation, the chains of her past finally broken. Back at Whispering Pines, Jake was pacing the length of the porch, his mind a whirlwind of doubts and fears. Brian's return had stirred up insecurities he thought he had buried. He couldn't shake the feeling that Claire might still have unresolved feelings for her ex. When Claire finally arrived, Jake stopped in his tracks, his eyes searching her face for answers. "Claire," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "How did it go?" Claire approached him, her expression soft but determined. "I told Brian that it's over. I made it clear that I've moved on." Jake's heart lifted, but doubt still lingered. "Are you sure, Claire? I don't want to be a rebound." "Are you sure you're ready for something new?" Claire took his hand, her touch sending a jolt of reassurance through him. "Jake, I am ready. Brian was a part of my past, but you're my present, and I want you to be my future." Jake's eyes searched hers, looking for any sign of uncertainty. When he found none, his tension melted away. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I've been afraid that I'd lose you before we even had a chance." Claire leaned into him, her heart swelling with love. "You're not going to lose me, Jake. I'm here." They stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace. Whispering Pines seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its tranquil beauty reflecting the peace that had settled between them. As they pulled apart, Jake cupped her face in his hands, his eyes filled with tenderness. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Claire felt a new sense of freedom, unburdened by the ghosts of her past. She and Jake spent every moment they could together, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. One evening, they decided to take a walk by the lake. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water. They strolled hand in hand, the silence between them filled with unspoken promises. As they reached a secluded spot, Jake stopped and turned to face Claire. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft but serious, "about us, and about what we want for the future." Claire's heart raced, anticipation and hope mingling within her. "What have you been thinking?" Jake took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I want to build a life with you, Claire. A real, lasting life. I know it's only been a short time, but I feel like we've known each other forever." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, her heart overflowing with love. "I feel the same way, Jake. I want to be with you, to build a future together." Jake smiled, his eyes shining with joy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, beautifully carved wooden box. "I found this at a local shop, and it made me think of you. Of us." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver necklace, the pendant shaped like a heart. Claire gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Jake, it's beautiful," she whispered. Jake took the necklace and gently clasped it around her neck. Claire threw her arms around him, their hearts beating in unison. "Thank you for believing in us, for believing in me." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over whispering pines. The future was still uncertain, but Claire knew one thing for sure, with Jake by her side. She could face anything. Chapter 10. The morning sun filtered through the tall pines, casting dappled shadows on the porch, where Claire and Jake sat, sipping their coffee in comfortable silence. The events of the past few days had been intense, but also transformative. They had confronted their pasts, acknowledged their fears, and now it was time to solidify their future. Claire reached across the table and took his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "I know that Brian showing up stirred a lot of emotions, but I want you to know that my commitment is to you and to us. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." Jake squeezed her hand, his tension visibly easing. "I believe you, Claire, but I need to be honest too. Seeing Brian made me realize how scared I am of losing you. I've been through so much loss, and I guess I'm just afraid it'll happen again." Claire's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. She stood up, moving to sit beside him, and took both his hands in hers. "Jake, we all have scars from our pasts, but we can't let them dictate our future. I'm willing to work through any challenges that come our way, together." Jake's eyes softened, his love for her clear and unwavering. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. They stayed like that for a while, wrapped in each other's embrace, the silence between them filled with promises of a shared future. Claire noticed Lily watching them from a distance. The young girl's eyes were filled with curiosity and a hint of apprehension. Claire smiled and waved her over. "Hey, Lily. Want to help us with some ideas for the resort?" Lily hesitated for a moment before approaching, her steps tentative. "What kind of ideas?" Claire knelt down to Lily's level, her smile warm and inviting. "We're trying to think of fun activities for the guests. Maybe you have some ideas? What would you like to do if you were a guest here?" Lily's eyes brightened at the thought. "I think we should have a scavenger hunt. And maybe a craft day where we can make things from stuff we find in the woods." Claire's smile widened. "Those are great ideas, Lily. How about we plan a scavenger hunt for this weekend? You can help us set it up. Lily's face lit up with excitement. Really? I'd love that. Jake watched the interaction, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. Seeing Claire connect with Lily in such a genuine way reaffirmed his belief in their relationship. He knew that Claire was not just a partner for him, but a positive influence in Lily's life as well. Later that evening, as they gathered for dinner, the atmosphere was filled with laughter and camaraderie. Lily was animatedly discussing her scavenger hunt plans with the other guests, her earlier shyness replaced by enthusiasm. Claire watched her, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. She felt like she was finally becoming a part of this little family at Whispering Pines. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, Claire and Ethan found themselves on the porch once again, the cool night air filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant call of an owl. The moonlight bathed the landscape in a silvery glow, casting long shadows that danced with the breeze. Ethan wrapped his arm around Claire, pulling her close. The heat of his body against hers sent a shiver of anticipation down her spine. "Thank you for today," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "For everything. You've brought so much light into our lives." Claire leaned into him, her heart pounding in her chest. The intimacy of the moment enveloped her, making her acutely aware of every touch, every breath. "It's been a long journey, but I feel like I'm finally where I'm meant to be. With you and with Lily." Ethan tilted her chin up, his eyes dark and intense as they locked onto hers. "I feel the same way." Their faces were inches apart, the air between them crackling with unspoken desire. Claire looked up at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of love and longing. Ethan's smile was radiant, his gaze never leaving hers. "Let's make a promise to each other, to always communicate, to support each other, and to never let fear hold us back." Claire nodded, her heart swelling with emotion and anticipation. "I promise, Ethan. Forever and always. You and Lily have given me more than I could have ever hoped for." Unable to resist any longer, Ethan leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a tender, lingering kiss. Claire responded eagerly, the kiss deepening as weeks of pent-up longing and emotion poured out. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. The stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter, reflecting the newfound hope and love that had blossomed between them. The kiss deepened, a slow burn that ignited a fire between them. The cool night air did nothing to temper the heat building between them. Ethan pulled back slightly, his breath ragged. "Claire," he whispered, his voice husky with emotion and desire. "Come inside with me." Claire nodded, unable to find her voice, her body already responding to the promise of what was to come. Hand in hand, they walked back into the lodge, the door closing softly behind them. Whispering Pines had brought them together, healed their wounds, and given them a new beginning. And as they walked together in the dimly lit hallway, wrapped in each other's arms, they knew they would face whatever challenges came their way. And tonight, they would celebrate the love that had brought them to this moment, letting the passion between them guide their way. Thank you for listening to Whispering Pines. If you enjoyed this story, we hope you will like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support.